Kaliningrad sits like a pressure cooker between Poland and Lithuania, a fragment of Russia wedged inside NATO territory. In 2026, the steam isn't just rising, it's rattling the lid. The Baltic surface looks calm, but underneath it is a tangle of patrol tracks, sonar pings, and policy tripwires. The Kremlin still calls the exclave an unsinkable fortress, but a fortress is only as strong as its supply lines, its political room to maneuver, and the confidence it inspires in friends and frightens into foes. On all three counts, Kaliningrad's edge is dulling. The map didn't change, the neighbourhood did, and the neighbourhood brought friends. Start with the shoreline. Since Finland and Sweden entered NATO, Finland in April 2023 and Sweden in March 2024, the Baltic Rim is now almost entirely alliance territory, except for Russia's coastal pockets. That matters. Air policing missions that once looked like a rotating courtesy now feel like an unbroken picket line, reinforced by Nordic basing and quick reaction jets. The strategic island of Gotland went from vulnerable prize to centerpiece of Allied planning. Swedish, Polish, and US forces drilled there through 2024, practicing exactly the scenarios Kaliningrad was meant to complicate. If you're looking for a single snapshot of the balance shift, it's the Swedish flag going up at NATO HQ, and the steady cadence of intercepts around the exclave since. Even Moscow's most stubborn optimist would admit this is a tighter lake than it was. Now the wires, the literal ones. In February 2025, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania finally cut the cord to the old Brel frequency area with Russia and Belarus, then synchronized with the continental European grid. The lights stayed on, the symbolism stayed loud. For Kaliningrad, that step didn't plunge anyone into darkness, but it shortened one more Russian lever and made the region's energy posture less hostage to Moscow's moods. When leaders gathered in Vilnius to mark the switch, they called it Energy Independence Day. That wasn't hyperbole, it was deterrence by infrastructure. Next, the barricades. Poland's East Shield, Tarja Wschód, is not a press conference prop, but a years-long build-out of fortifications, surveillance, and counter-UAS layers across the borders with Belarus and Kaliningrad. Warsaw describes it as the biggest border defense effort since 1945, with mainline investments kicking off in 2025 and maturing towards 2028. That's trenches, obstacles, hardened positions, and lots of wiring, yes, but it's also doctrine, logistics hubs, and fire plans stitched into NATO command networks. Add to that a parallel push across the Baltics and a fast-evolving European drone wall concept, and you begin to see why the Suwałki Gap looks less like a seam and more like a trap for anyone trying to tear it open. Germany's turn east was the other hinge. Berlin's first permanent foreign deployment since World War II, a roughly 4,800-strong armoured brigade, has begun taking root in Lithuania, headquartered at Rūdninkai with elements tied to Rukla. It's not at full strength yet, but the political signal is already doing work. The main effort is forward, the reinforcements are real, and response time across the corridor shrinks as concrete gets poured and families arrive. Deterrence isn't just tanks, it's the school bus that follows them. The brigade is slated for full operational capability by 2027, and even in build-out, it sharpens NATO's posture around Kaliningrad. Russia has tried to redraw the legal waterline. In May 2024, a draft Defense Ministry decree popped up, proposing revisions to maritime baselines in the eastern Baltic, before promptly disappearing in a flurry of confusion and denials. The message travelled, even if the decree didn't. Moscow wants more legal fog near Finland, Sweden, and the approaches to Kaliningrad. The result has been more scrutiny, not less. More patrols, more legal notes, more "we see you" moments at sea. Hybrid pressure in the Baltic isn't a subplot, it's the genre. Inside the exclave, logistics are the story behind the stories. After the 2022 sanctions wave, the European Commission issued guidance allowing limited rail transit of certain sanctioned categories between Russia proper and Kaliningrad. Strictly by rail, under quotas, and with checks. Trucks were out. The rules were tight. Russia's durable answer has been the sea. a rail ferry bridge from Ust-Luga to Baltic, and a container link from St. Petersburg. It works, but only with constant subsidies and hustle. In 2025 alone, Russian state entities boasted of more than 2 million tons delivered to Kaliningrad by sea. Fuel, fertilizer, construction materials. The unglamorous cargo of a pocket that must constantly be fed. A dependable workaround, yes. A cheap or flexible one, not really. Even the air is a maze. With EU airspace closed to Russian carriers since early 2022, flights between mainland Russia and Kaliningrad must thread a slender corridor of international airspace over the Baltic, skirting friend and foe by inches on a map, but miles in policy. It's legal, it's workable, and it's one more reminder that the exclave's lifelines run through other people's neighborhoods. No wonder NATO air policing feels relentless here. Lithuanian defense bulletins read like a metronome. No flight plan, transponders off, escort provided. Routine, yes, but routine is the point. On the seabed, the plot thickens. Since autumn 2023, the Baltic has seen a pattern of damaged power cables and telecom lines. Sometimes proven accidents, sometimes suspected sabotage. Always headaches for small economies that live on resilient connectivity. The response has been to push more naval presence, more inspection, and more attention to a shadow fleet of grey zone shipping that blurs commercial and political risk. After Christmas 2024, cable cuts NATO visibly upped its patrols. Through 2025, repairs, seizures, and court cases turned undersea infrastructure into headline territory. It's not a shooting war, but it is a contest, and Kaliningrad sits at the center of the map everyone's staring at. And yes, Russia still plays its old cards. The Baltic fleet drills loudly. Zapad 2025 folded Kaliningrad into distributed maritime and coastal defense scenarios. Surface ships rehearsed air defense and base protection tasks, while long-range bombers cut tracks in international airspace. None of that is theatre in the pejorative sense. It's muscular signaling. But the context has changed. Every launch and sortie meets an allied tracker. Every sudden line of effort meets a rehearsed response. When a neighborhood upgrades its alarm system, the prowler has to work harder just to look menacing. Energy, the perennial lever, has also lost some leverage. Moscow positioned the floating regasification unit Marshal Vasilevsky for Kaliningrad years ago. By 2024 to 2025, Gazprom was regularly using the same vessel as an LNG shuttle from the Portovaya plant, adapting as sanctions nibbled at carriers and cargoes. It keeps options open for the exclave, but the optics say it all. A backup that moonlights as a lifeline that doubles as an export workaround. Flexibility born of necessity is still necessity. Allies, for their part, are turning improvisation into a process. The EU's emerging counter-drone vision, rebranded into a continent-wide European drone defense initiative, aims for initial capability by late 2026 and full operational coverage by 2027, with a special emphasis on the eastern flank where Kaliningrad, Belarus, and Russia press closest. It's a literal mesh of sensors, jammers, and interceptors, but it's also a bureaucratic mesh. Procurement lines, standards, cross-border coordination. Dull? Maybe. But dull wins in the long run when the opponent's main weapon is friction. So, is Putin's grip slipping? Not in the cinematic way. No garrison is surrendering, no flag is coming down. But power isn't just about possession, it's about options. Kaliningrad once gave Moscow multiple levers: threaten the Suwalki Gap, complicate reinforcement routes, brandish tactical missiles to sow doubt, and exploit economic ties to temper Western responses. In 2026, each lever still exists, but each pulls less. The gap is watched and wired. Gotland is garrisoned. The undersea pipes and wires have guardians. Air corridors are narrow and predictable. Sea lifelines run on subsidies. And every grey move encounters a thicker layer of blue uniforms and black robes. In strategy, fewer good choices equal less grip. That's what slipping looks like from the inside. Let's pull apart the battlefield calculus. To threaten the Suwalki corridor from Kaliningrad, Russia would need mass, mobility, and surprise. Mass is limited by the pocket's size and supply friction. Mobility faces layered obstacles, anti-armor fire plans, and drone-jammed airspace. Surprise dies under NATO's ISR canopy, which now includes Swedish-Finnish sensors, German armor in Lithuania, and routine AWACS rotations. It's still possible to make mischief, to force NATO to fight in a vice, to raise risk with missiles, but it's harder to do anything decisive without triggering a quick collective answer. The old hope that Kaliningrad could paralyze the alliance by fear feels dated. The new reality is an alliance that shows up on Tuesdays. Economically, the exclave is living the paradox of the subsidized fortress. State support keeps ferries sailing and shelves stocked. The rail-by-quota guidance keeps bare minimums flowing. Local leaders tout annual tonnage like a victory speech at a shipping conference. But growth by transfer is balance sheet fragile. If an undersea cable breaks, a winter storm stacks up, or a sanction shifts from footnote to force majeure, the workaround machine grinds. Meanwhile, every ruble spent to keep Kaliningrad humming is a ruble not spent on capacities needed elsewhere. Empires don't crumble from one blocked road. They sag from paying too much to keep small roads open. None of this makes Kaliningrad harmless. The Iskander complex there is nuclear capable. Coastal missiles and air defenses complicate littoral operations. Electronic warfare spills across borders. And the Baltic anchorages still put holes to sea when Moscow chooses. But even these cards buy less panic than before. Nordic air and missile defenses are knitting tighter. NATO mines, submarines, and sea denial doctrine lean into the Baltic's cramped geography. And the political will, hardened by 2 years of open war in Ukraine, makes nuclear tantrums sound like what they are. Gambits that unite adversaries more than they divide them. It's one thing to brandish a saber. It's another when everyone has put on cut-resistant gloves. Which brings us to risk. The most dangerous path isn't an armoured dash. It's an accident with politics attached. A trawler that isn't. An anchor dragging where it shouldn't. A reconnaissance turboprop buzzing dark across a line. The Baltic is full of places where a Tuesday can turn into a crisis. The best answer is the one allies are practicing. Persistent presence, crisp comms, pre-coordinated playbooks, and a lawyer standing next to the admiral. When the hybrid game thrives on ambiguity, the discipline to be boring is a weapon. And yes, sometimes that means pretending not to hear a bark from a ship that's very obviously barking. Kaliningrad also matters for how it shapes narratives inside Russia. For 2 decades, it helped sell a story of reach, a sliver of Russia embedded in Europe, bristling with modern kit, reminding NATO that geography still had a sense of humor. In 2026, the story feels thinner. The exclave is defended, but at a premium. Supplied, but on a timetable others can observe. Influential, but mainly as a magnet for Allied attention. The Kremlin can point to exercises and parades, but neighbours point to permits, patrol logs, and building sites. Call it the tyranny of receipts. Moscow can proclaim, Warsaw and Vilnius can show invoices. All of this has practical consequences. If you're a Russian planner, every scenario that uses Kaliningrad now begins with how many ferries are available, and how many inspectors will they meet? How many drills have we conducted that allies have watched end to end? How quickly can German armour punch back? How many layers of counter-drone will shred our cheap scouts? That's a lot of questions to ask before the first move. That is pressure. And pressure wears the hand that grips, not just the thing being gripped. The Baltic today is like a crowded gym in January. Everyone's watching everyone else's form. Somewhere, a cable is definitely going to snap, and the guy who insists he doesn't need a spotter is precisely the one you keep a spotter on. Kaliningrad is the lifter with a belt and chalk and a lot of pre-workout, but fewer personal records than the hype would suggest. Meanwhile, NATO's doing boring reps. Logistics, interoperability, standardization. Not sexy, but that's how you keep from dropping a bar on your face. So, where does this go? Expect 3 grooves to deepen. First, infrastructure will continue to be weaponized and defended. The seabed will get more cameras, the shoreline more jammers, the grid more interconnectors, and every mystery hull more paperwork. Second, borders will turn smarter and meaner at the same time. East Shield concrete and European drone defense silicon will grow together, and the Suwalki Gap will stay lit like a runway at night. Third, Russia will keep searching for leverage through legal noise, surprise drills, and hybrid probes. Some days it will get a headline. Most days it will get a log entry. None of this is dramatic. All of it is decisive. Which leaves us with the core take. Putin can still hold Kaliningrad, but holding it now means paying more, risking more, and getting less in return. The exclave no longer terrifies planners the way it once did. It complicates them. That's nothing. Complication is a currency in geopolitics. But a complication without escalation power is a depreciating asset, especially when your opponents have learned, drilled, and built around it for 2 years straight. Deterrence isn't a slogan, it's a schedule, a budget line, a family moving into base housing near Vilnius. And those are the things that make the pressure hiss. The conclusion writes itself, like a warning label on a pressure cooker. Do not force open the lid. In 2026, the Baltic theatre is an ecosystem of sensors and habits. Kaliningrad remains a formidable node, but one embedded in an environment that increasingly sets the rules. Putin's grip on it isn't gone, it's tired. The more Moscow treats the exclave as a lever, the more Europe builds a hinge that won't budge. So the question for the Kremlin isn't whether Kaliningrad can still serve as a fortress. It's whether a fortress that must be fed by ferry, watched by drones, and explained away by lawyers is fortifying power, or just fortifying a story told for domestic audiences. And if stories are what's left, how many more chapters can this one run before the neighborhood simply drowns it out with routine?